Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thanks so much for clicking on a video. It means a lot. Hey, you guys keep clicking. If you guys keep clicking, I'll keep making. And today, I feel like we've gotten so much of this new era of Survivor, right? I feel like as the season has gone on and as we've learned more about the season all the way up until it's airing, and then while it's been airing, both the ads for the show on CBS and the show itself have really pushed this. It's a new era. Drop the 4, keep the 1. And I feel like it's time to dive in as this season comes to a close. I feel like we know what they want to do with this quote unquote new era, and by era I mean like the next 10 seasons, the 40s. And so I'm going to tell you about eight or nine things that I feel like are staples of this new era of Survivor, and what the 40s will end up being based upon. And then I'm going to go through them and say whether or not I like them, which ones need to change, and then at the end I'm going to compare the 30s to the 40s and how I feel like the 40s is lacking, whereas in the 30s delivered on one very specific thing. If you guys don't know, we do our power ranking show, on Sundays, and we just filmed our last power ranking show yesterday. I gotta say, it was the most fun that I've ever had on this channel, period. So if you want to go check that out on Sunday, go check that out. Maybe you're watching this after it came out, so go check that out. Search for it. It is the final power rankings that we're going to do for the next 2.5 months. And that's it. 70% of you guys who watch these videos are not subscribed. Let's change that. It's easy and it's free. And if that's it, let's go right into the video. Let's do it. So I'm basically, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to list off all of the characteristics of this new era of the 40s that I feel like are here to stay. Not things that are specific to only 41 and 42, but just in general, what I feel like production is going to stick with even after these seasons. And so I'm going to go through each one, and I'm going to say whether or not I like it. And at the end, we'll talk about the 30s versus the 40s. So the first characteristic of the new era that I feel like is definitely here to stay is the everything is a choice sort of moniker. So this sort of slogan of this new era, where Jeff loves this. Hey, you are going to ruin your own game. We are not going to ruin it. You are going to ruin your own game with a choice. And I actually like this. I think this is good. Give the players chances to ruin their own games instead of ruining their games through a bad twist or through an idle nullifier or through et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like if a player is going to ruin their own game by making a bad decision, that not only is more entertaining on a TV level, but it's also more fair, because you're giving the player the chance to not only fail but also succeed. If they had just added idol after idol and then tried to get Russell to find them, it wouldn't have been as impressive as Russell with his back up against the wall playing the idol and getting out Kelly. It's like, that's more fun when you put people in spots in which they have to make a choice. Do I go look for the idol? Do I not? Do I risk my vote? Do I not? Do I play in this challenge or do I not? Those choices I feel like are here to stay, and this is one of the very few things that I actually like about this new era of Survivor. The next thing I have is less idols. I feel like there is going to be less idols overall in the 40s versus the 30s, and really 20s as well. I feel like 39 is really like when it hit like its max ceiling. Where like I believe in 39 there was 14 idols found or something crazy like that. Someone in the comments can correct me, but it seems to me like in 39 it kind of like hit its head, where there's just so many idols floating around that I feel like they wanted to just chill, take a step back and say, hold on. And I really don't like this. I would take an idol play over what's going to be our next bullet, because I feel like idols are fun. And also idols have been tested and true. Like, they are 100% balanced items. You can misplay them. You can play them correctly. You can play them in ways that aren't just for yourself or for others, or just like one way or the other. There's ways to combat idols with split votes, but that way is also risky. So there's not an easy, idol beater, but there's also not like an OP. The idol itself isn't like some sort of OP thing. It's true and tested. It's stood the test of time, and I feel like the idols should always be something that's semi-abundant in the game. Obviously, 14 idols in one season is ridiculous. I think a better number would be something like 7 or 8 or maybe 6. Idol finds. as long as the usual thing happens where someone gets voted out with an idol in their pocket or plays it, the obvious, and then it would would get re-hidden post merge. Usually, I think in the end your season's pretty healthy with a good like 6 or 7 idols. In this season, we got three beware advantage finds, which I guess if you count those as idols, and then you have no idol finds in the post merge, so you only have 3 idols in this entire season of 41. So I feel like that's an issue. You should have probably 6, maybe 7 idols found in entire season. I know it's kind of popular to say, "Oh, I hate those pesky idols," but it's like I like the idols. What I don't like, and what they're actually increasing instead of, so they're decreasing idols, but they're increasing these non-idol advantages and just twists in general, right? They're instead of using these balanced things, they're using these very unbalanced either advantages or twists. So I'll give you an example from both camps. So an unbalanced non-idol advantage is the idol nullifier, or the extra votes balanced, but it's an example of a non-idol advantage. And then an example of a non-idol twist is just like, for an example, the hourglass twist. These are 2 things that are unbalanced: the idol nullifier and the hourglass twist. These are not fair. These are hurting players who are doing other good things. For example, the idol nullifier hurts a player for finding an idol, and the hourglass twist definitely hurts a player who wins an immunity challenge, especially if they flip the game. I am sincerely hoping that they never bring either of those back, but especially not the hourglass twist. I feel like these are two examples of how Survivor is saying, okay, y'all were talking smack about the idols, fine, they're gone. Now we're gonna be the idols, which I'll take idols any day over production, trying to do the job that idols used to do in making the game more fluid and allowing people who are on the bottom to get off the bottom. I think those are just not balanced twists and or advantages. The next thing that I have is out of order editing. Okay, I actually like this a lot. Obviously, I think it needs to be toned down a bit because they have done it now, like 3 or 4 times this season, and really they didn't even do it in the post merge. So they did it 3 or 4 times in one pre merge. So that's maybe like the maximum amount that I would want to see it happen. But when it did happen in this pre merge, I thought every single time it hit A plus. It was perfect. With the Nasir one, if we had seen Nasir find it and then we'd be going knowing, of course the end, then you kind of have some anticipation about, oh, like what are their reactions going to be. But because we figured out with Shan and Xander that Nasir has found the third one, it's much more fun for the viewer. And so I do really like the out of order editing, and not just reverse order editing, but just in general out of order. Like when they did these Xander flashback, that's pretty cool to like show like us, oh, actually Xander was lying the whole time, and like this is how he did it. He had wrapped up this idol and he gave this one away. That's cool. Out of order editing. The flashbacks get kind of annoying. Like the Xander one was kind of tedious. Like I feel like we could kind of put two and two together as the audience. And then there was 2 flashbacks at the start of this past episode, which were pretty useless to me. So I don't know. I feel like we were good without those flashbacks. I think flashbacks are a little more questionable, but the out of order editing for me is definitely a positive here. The next thing that I have is more passive gameplay. So I think with more twists that are not idols, because with idols, I feel like gameplay only increases, right? Because you like, for example, a season like Cambodia, all of the split votes and stuff that like went wrong or went right or didn't happen, that's idols making the game more complicated. Whereas in a season that just doesn't have as many idols and rather relies on these twists that come from production and these extra votes and things like that, it leads to more passive gameplay, right? Because you're more confident in flipping on your lines if you have an idol in your pocket and you know that next round is going to be a normal vote. But if you think that next round is the do or die challenge, you're not as likely to make a move like that, because you just never know what's going to pop up and ruin your entire game, either from production or from some weird obscure advantage that comes into the game. So I feel like with less idols and more non-idol advantages and more twists, we get more passive gameplay. And obviously I do not like this at all. I feel like it's not good for the game. I don't know why anyone would want more passive gameplay. If you really want it, try and make the argument in the comments. Maybe if it makes sense, I'll like it. But I just cannot see a scenario in which more passive gameplay is better for the show overall. And I feel like this season has brought us much more passive gameplay. Although there have been blind sides, I feel like the only two real blind sides were definitely the Nasir one, and I think probably the Deshan one as well. Both of them were pretty shocked. But everybody else, I mean, like Evie knew she was on the chopping block. Tiffany was on the chopping block. I think Liana did know that she was on the chopping block. Like, I think Sydney knew that she was on the chopping block. I think the gameplay was more aggressive in the pre-merge before they realized how this new era works. But now that they do, they're becoming a lot more passive in their gameplay because they're afraid to make a move, and then like the next big hourglass twist ruins their entire game. The next one I have is another negative one, and that's not being able to trust production. I think it's terrible. I think it sets a bad precedent because now it's like, can I trust that the reward really is cookies and milk? Like, is it actually just like the reward is that there you immediately go home? Like, I feel like when you open up the box of, hey, we're gonna lie to our players. Like, we're going to tell them, hey, this is the deal. This is what you get for winning, but actually you don't. And instead, you're actually now vulnerable to go home. That's a big problem for me personally, and I feel like that's just not okay in my personal book. And so when you do that, now you open up the box to say, well, who's to say that this reward is really for peanut butter and chocolate? Is it actually just like for nothing, and you just wasted energy? The players need to be. The production should never directly lie to the players. If production wants to withhold info or not tell them something, that's one thing. But to tell them something and then actively just be wrong about it is not cool. Next one I have is spending 15-minute chunks on woke stuff. I've talked about the woke stuff a lot, so I really won't talk about it here, but spending 15-minute chunks on race conversations and gender inequality conversations, although some of them have maybe some good points, it's just not the place, and it's definitely not the time to do it, with 15-minute chunks being chopped out of the episode. That is just unacceptable. I feel like that is way too long. This stuff can be 30-second, 30-second combos. Put it on your, the Instagram. Make it a secret scene. I don't care. I cannot have 15 minutes of my already short 42 minutes per week being the news. That's just never acceptable, ever. Next thing I have is Canadian casting. I actually like this. So for the first time in a few ones, I actually like something about this new era, and that's Canadian casting. I like opening up the casting to more people. Without this Canadian casting thing, we don't get Shan. That's a huge hit on the entertainment value of this season. So I'm definitely all for more people from more places being able to at least apply. I don't like if they make like a quota that says you have to have at least X amount of Canadian players, but I definitely think that Canada players being at least allowed to apply is always a good idea. I don't like quotas. And my last one is something that I don't like, and that's they seem to not be casting for villains anymore. They just don't like. I think the last time that they cast for a villain was, you could argue Missy, but like if you don't count Missy from what is the season called? I don't the Idols. I think the last one that they cast for was Bradley and Ghost Allen. Like they really haven't casted for a villain. Like you could argue that Sydney was a villain on this season, but I think they more casted Sydney for like an Angelina type. And if you call Angelina a villain, that's not really a villain. Angelina is more of a socially unaware person is dislikable, but not necessarily a full-on like Bradley or Peter from Korong or Scott from Korong. These blatant villains. That's not what Missy or what Sydney or what Ricard is. That's not what they are. They're more of dislikable people, and I think that casting for a villain is always a good thing. You want at least one person who is going to be dislikable. I feel like it's a lot easier to cast for likable people than it is to cast for villains, because a lot of times it's easier to play villainous than to play look like just a genuinely nice person. Like it's easier to act like Johnny Fairplay than to act like Janet. It's just much easier because anyone can be an a-hole. Not everyone can be just a decent person, which makes it even more important to dig for these people and find these people wherever that they're hiding. These villains waiting to happen. That's super important for the show, in my opinion. And I was going to talk about the 30s versus 40s dynamic, where the 30s was all about, I feel like for me that the 30s is all about advantages, production interference, and we're just going to drop these advantages and just back up. Whereas in the 40s seems to be, hey, you y'all on Twitter said that there's too many idols, bet all the idols out. But now we are going to step back in and we are going to do the work that the idols did. We think that the game needs us to interfere in order to create a more fluid game. And that's what they're going to start doing. And I feel like that's just not as good as just putting idols and backing off. Both have flaws, but I feel like the idol one is much more fun for the game. And that's it, guys. I just want to make a little quick video talking about how this new era of Survivor it's not looking too bright. It's not looking too bright. But I'm curious to see, guys, like, what do you guys feel like this new era is going to be defined by? And again, our power rankings comes out on Sunday. It's our last power rankings of this season, so have fun with that. None of this happens without you guys. Without you guys, I'm just a weird guy speaking into a weird microphone. That's all. I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.